I'm talking today about classics, cyborgs, and cybersecurity, with an emphasis on the latter. I'm a professor of classics in the School of Humanities here at Bristol, and I have particular research interest in stories. I'm a narratologist. And so telling stories is really what I do. I work on myths, mythic archetypes, character stereotypes, and the story frames and schemata that shape our approaches to the world, really, but with a narrow focus on how we use story to make sense of the future. And that includes emerging technologies. It includes risk. And in recent years, that has evolved into how that impacts upon the way we make sense of the world of cybersecurity, hence classic cyborgs and cybersecurity. So in recent years, this is when I'll discover this doesn't work. Hey! So in the last couple of years, I've worked with the Turing Institute. I'm a Turing Fellow. I'm a fellow with RISCS, the Research Institute for Socio-Technical Cybersecurity, and I lead the theme there on anticipation and futures literacy. So using storytelling to think through the sort of research ecosystem of cyber. I've done a lot of work recently with DEFRA. What's a classicist and a storyteller doing working with DEFRA? It's an excellent question. I ask myself this frequently. DEFRA have an astonishingly brilliant futures program. If you think about food security, how responding to Brexit has impacted upon the rural economy, in particular in recent years. And so robust futures thinking is an important part of that government agency's work. And so they've got a great approach to bringing in I don't know, it feels sometimes like Avengers Assemble. They go out and bring people together with a range of different skills for us to come and engage in some robust futures thinking, really trying to imagine what a good, strong, healthy kind of future environment under DEFRA priorities might look like. What else have I been doing? This is when I realise why I'm feeling a bit tired on a Monday morning. So DEFRA stuff is going on. We're also helping them train some AI for some futures narratives work. I'm the futures lead on the UKRI and government challenge for digital security by design. The idea is that instead of focusing on cybersecurity sort of at the user end of the supply chain, we go back to bare metal. This is when, as a classicist, I really run out of, credibility. But really trying to think about what if we went back to the bare metal, if our chips and our boards, and tried to build in the security at the design level. And you can see that the tagline for this is imagining secure digital futures. So story forms really important part of that imagination. It also helps the digital security by design communicate some of its aspirations. It's really hard to sell something that actually doesn't exist yet when there are no hard and fast use cases to take out to business, industry, and other governments. So a lot of the work I've been doing with them is kind of using robust imagining and thinking through story form to try and imagine a future world, a utopian world ideally, where digital security by design is baked into all the kinds of tech that we use and what that might enable us to do, as well as what it might protect us from. I've recently been doing a lot of work with Welsh Government, with Public Health Wales, but particularly through the Future Generations Commissioner. I love that Wales has this capacity. I think every government should have it. I'm lobbying hard internationally for more people to have a kind of futures commissioner or futures governor. Bit of work for MOD, which I won't talk about today. But I just want to flag those two fellowships with Turing and with RISCS, because these have really helped credential, I think, a classicist, a narratologist, to go out and do this work with industry and with government. And just that sense of, we will take a risk, we'll invite this strange person in for a meeting, we'll see how the conversation goes. So I think that those aspects have really helped, because we don't always talk the same languages. Academics don't necessarily talk the same language as our partners in industry and government. We often don't talk the same languages as each other. So in the School of Humanities, I might be talking about one thing, and my colleagues in cybersecurity or physics or robotics having a very different conversation. And I think that's where stories are a really useful vehicle for bringing us together and thinking through things in a kind of meaningful way and reaching a consensus together. So that's the kinds of things that I've been doing that really centre around this work for the National Cybersecurity Centre, part of GCHQ, where I've been working on a contract. They have a contract with the university, and I am their product that they've bought. That sounds a bit strange. But I've been working on various projects with their socio-technical research team. And I really want to emphasize the socio part of that socio-technical research team, and thinking how skills in humanities, in story, can help them develop their capability. And that's what I'm going to kind of focus on today in the last kind of few minutes, well, some of it anyway. I thought I'd start by, or in the midpoint, go back to the future, go back to tell you how this story developed. It began with work that I was doing on the science of stories. I've always worked on the intersection between humanities and science. My PhD theory is on chaos theory and narrative poetics. And who knew that being a kind of expert in chaos was going to be a useful skill set for the past 15 years? So bringing those two things together, science and story, science and humanities, led to an impact case study for the last REF, where I reduced the number of resources that went out to schools from Aberdeen down to Plymouth, helping schools to bring those two STEM subjects and humanities subjects together. And that's, of course, one of the key myths from the ancient world that deals with that intersection of science and story is the story of Pygmalion. Happens to be part of my PhD work as well. Pygmalion creates the first artificial human, the first artificial woman, the first robot, or is it a cyborg, or is it really a sex robot? And as I began to publish this work, I got invitations to speak on sex robots, and I spent a lot of time doing that. Got a bit icky, so I sidestepped into the world of cyborgs, which I enjoyed more. Did a lot of work on cyborgs. That's part of my Turing Fellowship. And that sort of evolved into working on AI, artificial intelligence, which, of course, there's a natural progression to this, of course, kind of led through to cybersecurity. The work that I've been doing with NCSC recently then has really focused on that ecosystem of stories and culture and society around our engagement with cybersecurity. And we produced a report earlier this year, I think this came out in April, on stories of cybersecurity. I love that GCHQ and NCSC were really sort of committed to pursuing this interest. It does feel very left field, but the interest and the take-up across that community has been really exciting for me to be part of. I thought I'd give you a quick sense of what I'm doing in this space. We started trying to map the ecosystem. Who were the tellers of stories? Who were the audiences for those stories? What were the purposes and the occasions? And the only way I could really sort of wrap my head around this really complicated socio-technical world was to think of it like a zoo. So I started putting different players in different pens and working out which animals played well with others and which animals were inclined to eat others, given the opportunity. And then who were the visitors and what maps and information did they need? What were the pain points, the pinch points in this ecosystem? We had a number of different interviews. We had workshops and kind of focus group meetings, and really just trying to think through what we could learn from storytelling and narrative to enhance and improve those things. And I want to say this is more than about comms. This is about storytelling as a way of selling things or telling better stories. For us, it was really, I think, about understanding the role of storytelling and narrative as an opportunity for making sense of the world. So understanding, for example, the dynamics between GCHQ and NCSC, the fact that that relationship and that history gives NCSC quite a mystique, a sort of mysterious quality that configures them in archetypal mythic lore, if you like. The sense that GCHQ and NCSC are the Gandalf characters within this story world. They are donors, that they hold privilege, arcane knowledge that they can share with the rest of the world. And once we developed that sort of characterization, we started working on what's the rest of this team doing. We came up with the idea of the quest archetype. We've had a ball, I have to say. And just trying to think how that plays with regulators, with industry boards, businesses, and citizens, who are all part of our work on this side. Now, you might wonder, again, what is going on here? They sort of seem particularly eclectic, and I just kind of want to, I suppose, confess I'm a one-trick pony. I am a hedgehog. I know one trick really well, and that is stories. So I'm not an expert in cybersecurity, as you will have gathered, or indeed emerging technologies, but I know story, and I know stories well, and I know how they shape the way that we move through the world, make sense of the world, and that's my USP as a project in this strange ecosystem. I found other hedgehogs, other one-trick ponies from the arts and humanities, rolling around, that's the hedgehog again, in this world. And of course, most of the successful things we do are collaborative. So joined forces with other humanities scholars from across the country, and we've produced a team called Flint, Futures Literacy Through Narrative. The red team here at Bristol very helpfully made us look professional rather than just random scruffy oiks from arts. And I think this has really helped, again, with that credentialing. So when we talk to governments and they say, can you tell us a little of this about what you've done and send us some stuff, we can point them to our website, we can send them our brochures, which, again, has been really helpful. And we're just beginning, as I say, taking on consultancy work with different government organisations, including Welsh Government. I'm going to pause there. I really talk so fast because I have so much to pack in, so I hope you followed a third of that at least.
Genevieve, that's so inspiring. I'd love to talk about it all day, but do we have some questions for Genevieve? It's extraordinary work.
It's Amazon's Alexa. And I was wondering, are people telling stories to Alexa, about Alexa? I sometimes feel bad shouting orders at someone in the corner of a room. I have a moment of class angst. So what are the stories we're telling about Alexa? What should we tell?
Oh, I'm so anti-Alexa, I don't know where to begin. The stories that people are telling Alexa, and I like to think I'm part of that world as well, in terms of shaping some of the stories that we are telling, particularly in industry and government around this. The notion of the Alexa goes back, I'm not going to go on, I could talk about this for hours. Alexa has a really long history. 3,000 years ago, yes, you heard right, 3,000 years ago, Homer and the early Greek poets were telling stories about embodied, which Alexa kind of is, and disembodied, cybernetic creatures serving as handmaidens. The god Hephaestus makes them. And we have not evolved those narratives, I think, one chapter forward in those last 3,000 years. The fact that Alexa is gendered, don't get me started, Andrew, that people, because we couldn't possibly have a male, sort of handmaid in the house, in the kitchen, helping us and finding our music and listening to everything we say and selling our data to dark corporations. I will pause there because it's not good for my blood pressure. But those kinds of stories are precisely, is Alexa Mary Poppins? Is Alexa one of the Amphipoloi from ancient Greece? Or something much, much darker?
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Genevieve, round of applause. Thank you so much.